Hi, everyone. Today's episode is From Russia with Love. You're watching Techstrong, gang. Hi, everyone. It's Alan Shimo. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Techstrong, gang. Dos vidania. But anyway, you know what? We live in a crazy world. Once again, I wake up and I'm looking, what has Biff done today? So we're going to be talking about it. We've got a couple of blocks to talk about of some interesting things going on in the world, and we've got some great folks here to talk them to. It's kind of core Techstrong gang folks today. Let me introduce you to them. First of all, giving us the 411 from, I don't even know what the area code is out there anymore, John, but from Silicon Valley.
Oh, it used to be 415. Now it's 650.
Okay, the 411 from the 650.
You were close. Yeah, you were close.
It's our editor at large, John Swartz. Hey, John, how are you, man?
I'm good. I'm just kind of reeling from a very long speech last night, but
I didn't watch it.
We move on.
There
was a speech last night.
I don't know. I watched something else.
Anyway, it was 2 nights ago.
Going from high atop Silicon Valley to sea level, where he's, I think, well, you're actually not at Key West anymore, right? You kind of turned into the Gulf a bit.
In the area, in lower Keys, today's island in the Where's Waldo search is Raccoon Key. So you can Google map that up. It's a couple of miles offshore away from US 1. I've been edging towards the Gulf edge, the content keys. We'll get to in the next couple of days to check those out.
Very cool. Chris Blask, our security expert, cyber expert. Going from there, back up high into the mountains.
Rocky Mountain High.
Right? It's our guitar man, Mitch Ashley. Hey, Mitch, how are you?
Very good. Very good. Just, holding things down at the top of the peaks here in Colorado.
All right. Keeping the sky up.
Yep. Holding the sky.
Yeah. Very cool. And then from there to Harrison, New York, the seat of Techstrong content. It's our chief content officer, Mike Vizard. Hey, Mike, what's going on?
Hey, the birds are chirping and there's buds on the trees, and I ain't talking about the kind they sell in Colorado. So
no.
spring's coming.
All good. And the Yankees keep winning, man. The Yankees looked good again. Anyway, it's all preseason, of course, means nothing, but still. Let's move into today's news, guys. I kind of teased it off in the beginning. Pigs fly. And we've decided, or the government, or at least our esteemed Secretary of Defense, I'm not going to say anything more that I'd like to, says that we should, supposedly, because now I'm seeing pushback, that we should stop offensive cybersecurity procedures, operations against our warmest ally, the Russian Federation. Very good, comrade. Mike, what do you say?
Well, I say that it's hard to tell what's going on here, and not everybody, as I understand it, who's involved in this might necessarily report up to the Department of Defense. So there seems to be some confusion as to who's doing what. And of course, the best defense is a good offense. So it's hard to say what an offensive thing is versus a defensive thing is these days. But Chris, what's your read on what's going on here?
Oh, Kim Zetter and other people that I trust have been reporting on it. It's like, you said it well enough. I don't know. I haven't talked to sources and so forth. The fact that it so matches our expectations, and what we as a nation are communicating, to this, not ally. Our main adversary in the world right now is Russia. I almost said China, but in a sane world, China would be our real opposition, because Russia is a tiny little country with the economy of Italy, right? That just happens to be bombing one of our allies, and our maneuvering around them doesn't make sense. They are the existential threat. So whether and to what extent, this order or directive was given or thought to be given by people who were taking actions on our behalf, the fact that it's not shocking is what we should be shocked about.
I'm disappointed in you guys. Yeah, I figured you'd be more savvy and kind of catch on to what's going on here. What's really happening is this is a Marco Rubio and Trump secret plan to partner with Canada and Mexico to give Russia a giant head fake to think that we're their friends, and China too, right? In the meanwhile, we're undermining all that stuff. He's ramping up.
There it is. We're playing checkers and they're playing 4D chess. Exactly. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. Look, let me just throw some stuff in here. Number one, Russia's economy. I don't know if it equals Italy, Chris, but I've heard it's similar to New Jersey. And being from New York, you from Jersey, that's a, but what Russia has and has had beyond their economic footprint is their military footprint, because they are, depending who you believe, the first, second, or third largest purveyor of nuclear weapons in the world. And they're not shy about threatening to use them. We've heard it numerous times during the 4 years, whatever, of this Ukrainian war, right? And that, if not for the nuclear weapons, honestly, who would give two craps about what goes on in Russia, right? Let's be honest about it. However, not equal to their military footprint, but their hacking footprint has forever, since there's been an internet, been a huge footprint. Whether it's a wink from the government letting groups operate openly within the Soviet Union and then Russia, or Russian government assets themselves, what we used to call the KGB. Now it has some truth speak names. Time and time again, attacks in this country and in the West have been tracked back to groups based in Russia operating under the cover of the Russian government. And for us to ignore that and not do is a terrible dereliction of duty. Pretty much what you'd expect from a guy who shouldn't be the Secretary of Defense to begin with.
Well, in a sense, too, you think back to the 2016 election, and Trump benefits, again, from Russian meddling. So in a sense, this is part of his reward to them, since he no longer has to run for office anymore. And on the flip side, you got this obsession with China and security and DeepSeek. I mean, we spent so much time within the government thinking about banning them for probably good use, or at least limiting the use. But on the Russia side, as you said, Alan, I mean, there is great antagonist is Russia is, and yet we kind of we're looking the other way. And again, I'm not even sure what the hell Hegseth is doing. I mean, evidently he ordered the U.S. Cyber Command to halt offensive cyber operations, and this was supposedly went into effect, or the order went in late February, yet there's pushback. I mean, it's you can't get a straight answer from these guys, but I think at the very least, I would argue that, again, with Russia, they're just going to look the other way. They always have, and they will continue to, especially in this asymmetrical warfare front.
I mean, read your Leo Tolstoy, right? This is War and Peace. It's about court posturing and appearances and whatnot. And this is, Alan, you're entirely correct. What happened? The Soviet Union collapsed, and the Russian mafia and the Russian government merged, right? And what's been going on in cyber operations for the last decades is that Russian cyber criminals are given free rein to do anything they like, as long as they use KGB/FSB tools, right? And should they, compromise something of interest, they give that access to to the government, right? So it's all the same thing. And I'm sorry, but if you watch Sopranos, I don't want to force people to go read classic Russian literature, but it's a lot of posturing. And for us to say, even give the impression that we would let the heat off on them, no, absolutely not. You want to threaten to hack our grids and turn it off, do it. We'll bring your whole infrastructure down.
And
you have to have that posture.
Let me say something about China, though. Right? We don't live in a black and white world where I've got Boris and Natasha over here, the bad guys. Come, we go get Squirrel, right? And then we're the Lone Ranger and Tonto here. We're the good guys, and that's what the world is. No, there's more. You've got the Chinese. The Chinese are not angels, and they ain't our friends either. And it's always been a little education for Mr. Secretary of Defense. The United States defense strategy has always been, we must be able to fight wars on multiple fronts at the same time. We've got to be able to deal with enemies, mortal or not, on multiple fronts at the same time. Just because you want to take it to China or thwart Chinese hacking, which is terrible, and it's been terrible. And back in my still secure days, Mitch knows this, we were right on the front lines of that stuff. That doesn't mean Russia's the good guy. And when Russia's the bad guy, doesn't mean China's the good guy. There's multiple levels of bad guys in this world. It's a big bad world out there. And for us to take the bullets out of our gun, no, the only thing missing is someone to get up on a microphone and say, I've brought us peace in our time.
The only reference a couple of nights ago that Trump made about defense was this ridiculous Golden Dome idea, which was basically a ripoff or a rebaking of the Strategic Defense Initiative or Star Wars. That was the only thing he referenced. And again, it's just like in the next segment, we're going to talk about DOGE, but just kind of pulling things out of a hat. And the one thing I want to foreshadow before the next segment is this $500 billion figure that keeps coming up in terms of part of the scam or the schemes. But again, it's we have multiple enemies, and the fact that we're not. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So let's bring this back to the average cybersecurity and business executive out there, Chris. Should I expect, and a significant increase in the number of attacks coming out of Russia-aligned cyber syndicates aimed at U.S. assets because they're going to be basically going, well, we got a free pass. Here we go.
I'm trying to be objective about this, because my position and opinions I think are clear. Maybe not. Maybe the opposite. Maybe the direction for the Kremlin is, hey, reward Trump for his capitulation and go off. Let the stats go down a little bit. That might be a little bit too intelligent for the people in charge. But short of some direction from the Kremlin to reward our misbehavior, I would say sure. This is a bit more free reign for all the cybercrime operations out there that they're likely to be more rewarded. They're so much of the ransomware and so much of cybercrime. Like I say, Alan, this is not about Russia. Russia is actually a lovely country. It's just a bit of a train wreck now. This comes from everywhere, but Russia is one of the massive actors, and this does absolutely nothing to slow them down. Again, unless Putin, wants to wave a flag at his criminal fleet, to slow down for a minute.
All right. So if you assume that the glass is half empty rather than half full, I would suggest the key word of the day is incoming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't pay less attention.
Let your guard down, folks.
Let me politics aside for a second and craziness aside for a second. The article that we're talking about that spawned this conversation is an article in Security Boulevard, I think by Jeffrey Burt. And he has a ton of really credible friends of ours in the cyber world who are talking out about this. I'll also point out that at least for now, NSA, CISA, some of the other government agencies who are on the front lines of cyber are not necessarily, from what I understand, part of this DOD edict, though I can't imagine that the Secretary of Defense is allowed to do anything without the okay from fearless leader. And so it probably extends, I wouldn't be surprised if it extended into the rest of the government, but it doesn't extend to private industry. So my advice, to your point, Mike, to private industry and my cyber profession, fellow cyber folks out there, stay vigilant, keep doing your job, right? With or without the government or the US government, we still have a mission to work on here, and the mission remains the same. Keep our infrastructure secure, keep our businesses secure, keep our people secure. I'll leave it at that. Good? All right, let's take a break on Techstrong Gang. We're going to come back and, we'll continue the fun. We're going to talk about, supposedly how AI is being used by DOGE and, that advisory group that really has no official power to change the government. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
All right. Well, as John alluded to, we're going to have a conversation here about, what exactly is going on with DOGE and their use of AI and the alleged amount of waste that they are finding, because there's a lot of people who are calling maybe BS and all of this stuff. But John, you've got a story up on Techstrong AI talking about a group who's kind of asking for some records to maybe hold folks accountable. What's going on?
Well, there's a group called Democracy Forward, which has been filing a lot of legal actions against the Trump administration. They've been very busy. They've done at least 24 legal actions, including this Freedom of Information Act filing and some other actions. What they're looking into are they want public record requests from several federal agencies on the use of artificial intelligence to make personnel decisions. In other words, the decisions that I'll give you some of the organizations. There's DOGE, first and foremost, Office of Personnel Management, General Services Administration, State, Defense, Treasury Departments. And what they're trying to figure out is, and what they think is happening, is that DOGE in particular is using AI as part of this email campaign. Remember, again, where Musk was trying to force government employees to respond to what they did the last week with 5 things. And in effect, what the DOGE is doing allegedly is using some of those responses to figure out who's worthy of staying on in their employment and who they're going to get rid of. And in a sense, the executive, the person who's in charge of Democracy Forward, has said that DOGE and the administration are operating in this shroud of secrecy, and their governing by chaos tactics have led to less efficient government and more disruptions to our safety and security. When Trump was talking during his interminable State of the Union address, he mentioned that the initiative to cut back costs had found hundreds of billions of dollars in fraud. And he, at one point, he threw out the number 500 billion, which I mentioned earlier. That always seems to be a pat number that they're using for everything. He also referred to Musk as the head of DOGE, which was kind of interesting. But in any event, allegedly, Musk, who has talked about using AI for efficiency purposes, is being looked into by this organization. It'd be really interesting to find out what they discover. But again, AI is being used to eliminate jobs, which might be a precursor to other industries and other agencies doing the same thing in the future.
I'm a little dubious of the whole use of AI to begin with, because if I look at what seems to have happened is they basically are cutting everybody who was hired in the last year or two, and those all seem to be hired under the Biden administration. And then the next thing just seems to be flat out, let's go do global search for the term DEI and anything else like climate, and we'll just cut those things, and that's about the extent of their effort. So I wouldn't need AI to go do all that. But Alan, what's your take?
Oh, you think I have a take?
Yes, you in the back of the room raising your hand.
Yeah. Well, John, good article, by the way, on AI, on Techstrong.ai on this. I don't know. There's also a Washington Post article that I worked that DOGE's AI use in government doesn't add up, and quite frankly, it doesn't. But let's step back for a second. Does anyone else find the irony in let's keep AI safe and not profit Mr. Musk using it for these purposes? Elon the hypocrite strikes again, right? So in other words, you can't use it you shouldn't use it for all those things, but I will. Because after all, I have money, and therefore there are no rules that apply to me. I mean, this is really the crux of it.
Fritz, he was the guy who went after OpenAI because it wasn't safe and secure. That's
exactly.
That's why on principle, he has to leave before he decided he wanted to try to buy them in another weird publicity stunt.
The whole thing is look, I'm telling you, dude, I wake up every day and I'm looking for Biff up in that big tower in that Vegas kind of hotel saying, what kind of craziness is what's right is wrong. Nights in white satin, breathe in the gathering gloom. What goes on in this world? But nevertheless, it's just par for the course of how they are just mishmashing the federal government. And no, it wasn't the most efficient organization in the world, that's for sure. But it's almost by design not to be efficient. It's almost by design.
I think, Alan, what we're seeing is the Trump effect rolling out to other people. Musk has clearly learned the art of projection, right? Oh, you shouldn't use AI for those things, and then I'm going to do it myself. That's just one of 1,000 things. As well as if I say it, it's true. Whether as any meeting in reality, kind of we expect things to tie back to something that makes sense, but they don't. 9 times out of 10, maybe 10 out of 10, it just doesn't. So I look at it as, but then the next thing is then we're going to hear Musk complain about how someone's using AI against something he believes.
Of course we will. But the bottom line is, what are the repercussions here, guys? What are the repercussions here?
I don't think we're going to know that for.
Oh, I think we're going to know real soon.
You do? Why? I think they're using it in a lot more ways than we know about.
Yeah, I agree.
No, but I think you are going to see the gears of government grinding to a halt. And then all those people who raise their hand who say, yeehaw, this is what we voted for.
Until their house burns down.
Watch their house burn down.
Anymore. I'm from Canada.
So I'm trying to filter out all of this and get to the topic because again, the adversarial goal is to make it impossible to talk, right? This is all, cognitive denial of service attacks, right? Give people so much to talk about that they have no time left to talk about bloody anything else. And in this particular topic, I don't really know, but I look at artifacts like, so you have this DOGE operation, thrown together in 5 days, and they get 2 million email responses. Humans aren't even reading through that ever. So there's obviously a lot of automation filtering going on. Is it LLMs, AI? Yeah, probably. Right. And that's just so obvious on the surface. And they couldn't possibly even do anything without just automating everything. So you fire 1 million people without looking at 2 of them.
But Chris, let me point out the emperor has no clothes. do you really think they go through this and that's what they're making decisions on? Let me tell you something. They've made the decisions on what agencies were going to get cut, what programs were going to get cut, were made. This is, you know what I mean? This is a bass-ackwards situation. They already know what they want to do and what they're doing. It. They just use this stuff to keep you guys busy. They're doing what they want. They wanted to get rid of the Department of Education. They wanted to get rid of the USAID thing. They're claiming, I don't know, how many people are 150 years old in the world now, in our country now? 10,000, 50,000, because that's what the coding defaults to. This is for consumption, so he could stand up and bandy about that $500 billion number, and then all the yeehaws or deplorables or whatever the hell you want to call them go on Facebook and say, "Oh, we cut $500 billion," and then they find out poor Aunt Mary's Medicare got cut, and poor Aunt Mary can't get dialysis anymore. Sorry, Aunt Mary. Right? This is the world we're living in, guys.
But John, it's kind of, at least I find it kind of weird to watch. It's like, so they make a claim on a savings. Then there's this contract that they said they cut. Then 3 days later, the website changes and that savings wasn't there in the first place. And so these numbers they're bandied about seem to be,
Well, that was part of the Post article. The numbers
funny,
don't add up.
Mike, I was thinking about that in terms of like all these manufacturing ideas or these deals that they're throwing out there. So I went back and looked at Foxconn and looked back at the original terms of that, which were like in the tens of billions of dollars, and it ended up being like a $600 million project. They talked back then at Foxconn about 30,000 jobs. It ended up less than 1,500. And I think the same principle applies to this. Trump also mentioned in his speech Apple and the $500 billion they're going to spend, which many of those programs are already underway, by the way. It's never going to reach that level. At least Musk, in Musk's weird way, he will project the truth once in a while. And he laughed at the idea of the SoftBank deal, which Trump ballyhoos SoftBank during his speech. I just think all this stuff is about flooding the zone, overwhelming us with things that are silly that we fixate on, and we never learn. As the press, we never learn.
We have to separate. We have to separate the noise from the signal, right? 99.99% is the noise, right? And us chasing down all that noise is distractions, right? Kind of keep the dots back. Yesterday or 2 years ago or whatever is kind of pointless, right? What are they really after? I think is what your point is, Alan, is those decisions have already been made, right? Here's the agencies we want to cut. This is what we want to stop doing. And we'll find whether a path to do that, and there'll be a wake of chaos in that process, as well as everything else we pile on to confuse the situation and distract everyone for what we're really doing.
The one thing, can I mark the tape on this? I'm going to compliment Trump on something I think he does better than anyone I've ever seen. And that is, in a sense, manipulating that too. Well, two things. Manipulating the media and forcing them in a weird way or tricking them in a weird way to follow a certain path, which they do ad nauseum. And they fall into this trap. Then he switches gears and moves to the next topic. And I think this is what we're going through again with DOGE. I would really, if you add up the numbers of some of the things he mentioned that they had allegedly saved on, would probably be less than $500 million at best. And yet he's talking about saving $500 billion.
Well, you have to give the Democrats credit for their pickleball paddle strategy last night. What an absurd thing.
So, I'm gonna find a silver lining in this somewhere, right? So the AI in this topic should be used by us, by Techstrong, by ABC, because the old cliche we're all talking about here, it takes 2 seconds to lie and it takes 2 hours to refute it. By that time, you're lying about something else. One thing AI might be really good at, and maybe media organizations should be specifically deploying it, is not spending the time. Everything that comes out, have AI filtered out. So we're not sitting there Googling. We don't have people researching to find out what the stupid lie is last time. And I am reaching here, right? We don't have At the national level, our own government is the adversary, right? We don't have any national defenses, and we are at the public sector level working against having defenses. Maybe this is something that media organizations should invest in to shorten that loop for the
Yeah,
rest.
I think you're onto something. You put maybe even a crawl across the bottom of the screen as he's speaking in real time with the AI response or the AI fact checking. I don't know, something like that. Although Americans don't like to read, so maybe that won't work.
They're
But
not interested in facts. People aren't interested in facts. When you point out something is nonsense, they move to the next thing. Well, what about this? What about that? Take vitamin A for your measles. I read a friggin' article yesterday. You know, we're recommending vitamin A for measles, and because vaccinations are a personal decision. And after all, before we had vaccinations, virtually every child in America had measles. And you know what? Only 1 out of every 1,250 children who had measles dies. What's the big deal? Until it's your kid, or your nephew, or your niece, or someone you love. Then that 1,250 out of 1 out of 1,250 becomes real. That's what this whole thing is. This whole thing is. I'm done. We're going on Techstrong. We're taking a break. Let's come back and talk about.
One last thing. Mark Twain had it right. A lie travels halfway around the world before the truth puts its shoes on. There you go.
That's exactly it. You're watching Techstrong, gang. Let's come back and talk about technology.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hey, folks, welcome back. We're going to geek out a little bit because, well, politics is politics and tech is tech, or at least it's supposed to be. But, things get intermingled. But, Mitch, there's a small little conference that was happening in Europe called Mobile World Congress. A few 100,000 people show up at that thing. I think it's one of the largest conferences in the world. And one of the things that leapt out at me was this announcement from Red Hat where they had lined up, I think, a half a dozen telcos or so to deploy their cloud native platform called Red Hat OpenShift. And it seems to me like we're just starting to move a boatload of code out to the network edge here. What's going on?
Well, yes, you're right. Mobile World Congress is the ginormous conference of conferences. It's quite an experience to go. It's interesting. Red Hat is making a really strong play. I mean, they've already been in the telco industry with OpenShift. That's really where OpenShift kind of got a lot of its functionality and legs came from working with telcos. And now they're extending that kind of up the stack, if you want to think of it that way. In one way is capturing as more things go to the edge or more things are considered cloud native, whether that means just containerized or if it means, building it with other things like microservices, et cetera. As more things move to the edge, just like, the radios have been softwareized and moved to the network, more software is going there too that they're deploying, and they want to simplify or at least offer the telcos a way of not just running OpenShift in the big behemoth data centers or cloud centers, but also running it at the edge, because that's where the action is, and that's where more software is moving. So, the companies we would recognize in the U.S. here were like Orange and Fujitsu and T-Mobile, I believe. There were, I think, 4 or 5 others, Symphony, some others I'm not that familiar with. We're talking about moving more applications and supporting OpenShift as part of their infrastructure. Now, that's a migration process, right? If they're not already doing that at the edge, there'll be some work to this. So this is directional. But, Red Hat is really making a strong play, not just on the infrastructure, but also on the development side of things. We're seeing more and more announcements come that are directed at AI and at software development.
I think AI is going to kickstart this thing in a bigger way because we need to process and analyze more data closer to the point where it's being created and consumed than these round trips to the cloud and all the network latency that goes with that doesn't really work all that well. So my question therefore is, is this going to wind up in a situation maybe where we have some more software at the edge than we have in the cloud one day?
Possibly, or at least wider spread for sure. I mean, they bought NeuroMagic back in November, which was all about deploying AI, right? Not just to the core, but also to the edge. So, yeah, it's moving that direction. Yes, the gentleman in the back of the room is raising his hand. I think you had a question. Yes, you.
Thanks, Mitch. I think it's important not to lose the cloud native aspect of this, right? Cloud native doesn't necessarily have to live at the hyperscaler cloud center. It could exist on bare metal at your data center. It could be on the edge. It could be everywhere and anywhere, which is a good plug for an event we're going to plug at the end of this. But what it does do well in greenfields, it's proven to be a pretty big task to transform your existing apps and infrastructure from monolith to cloud native, right? And cloud native in all of its glory and flavors, right? So you're talking about not multi-threaded. I always mix up the word. Well, distributed, but no, from an architectural point of view. Not multi-threaded, but it's multi-threaded. Microservices, right? So when you talk about moving from monolith to microservices, you talk about distributed core, edge, data center. That's a lot easier to do with a blank piece of paper to start than it is to take something that is mission critical or people are using already and convert it. And to me, that's a huge piece of this, right? I saw an article last week. They estimate that for new applications, 85% will use microservice architecture, cloud native technologies. But transforming, and there's a lot of applications out there that need to, will be transformed. That's a much heavier lift. A much, much heavier lift.
I think as we get closer to the end of the decade, though, we'll hit a tipping point where the amount of cloud native code will have reached a point where it just becomes simpler and easier to containerize the legacy app, including the virtual machine, and run that on Kubernetes alongside the cloud native stuff to have one single set of platforms to manage. But Mitch, is that wishful thinking or what?
I don't think at all, Mike, because we think about OpenShift as kind of the infrastructure management of it, if you will. But right on top of that is, even the container services that you run in OpenShift, that's Kubernetes underneath all of that. So I think our definition of cloud native needs to expand. Yes, I mean, today we kind of think of it as microservices, et cetera. We're also thinking about it as you containerize and run things on Kubernetes, whether it be legacy systems or things that are partially modernized. But on the other end of the spectrum is also agents, AI, right? That is also being deployed. And we have data from a survey that's coming out here in the next few days about how much of the workload people are putting of AI in Kubernetes, which makes a lot of sense. So cloud native really means kind of distributed computing anywhere at the edge, at the core, and with workflow management, Kubernetes, or if there's something else someday that takes its place. That's where we're evolving to. I think of it more broadly, not just rebuilding it one way with microservices, because it may not be that. It may be a combination of multiple things that it's built in.
All right. Hey, Chris, I don't know if this has been lost on you or not, but I think, if you listen to what we just said, we extended the attack surface that needs to be defended by a factor of 20.
Or contracted it. I don't know, right? This is the whole cloud argument, right? If we just do all our own security ourselves, we're better than outsourcing that to some company that lives and dies by their platform being secure. Yeah, it's a very simple view. I mean, these are complex issues and so forth, but even security companies, the time you have to do your own network administration, much less, deep dive security, I've seen it over and over again, right? We're a security vendor. Obviously we do this well. It's like, yeah, maybe not. Right.
Yeah.
So
And those
I don't know if it gets
telcos
any
are
worse.
doing an awesome job on security, man.
Well, you have to kind of live in a world where everything is changing all the time. Otherwise, you're going to be catatonic with the amount of change that's happening and the attack surface getting so broad. And to Alan's point he's made about the adoption of AI, it's a train nobody's stopping. And the same thing is true to moving to cloud native, to the edge, distributed workloads. We think about what it looks like now. It'll look even a much bigger attack surface in 5 years from now.
The all cloud stuff, MSSPs, outsourcing your security operations, like everything, it's been, more than 30 years. I've been following this along. And in that, one of the best marketing pieces, maybe sums all this up, is IBM. They had those blue and blue ads. God, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago. But it's this great one. Is this, frantic little office conference room, and these people are there, and the big boss comes in, and he's like, okay, our production down? No, production's fine. Is our this down? It's no, we're fine. Why are we here? It's like we're a shirt company. We make shirts. Not a database company, not an IT company. Yeah, even technology security companies make security technology to sell. That doesn't necessarily mean they are network security, information security implementation companies. So at a certain point, the adversary in security has, along with everything else, been evolving from script kiddies to nation states and. I've always thought at a certain point, not just the security, but the whole IT infrastructure needs to get out of most companies.
Agreed. Just a quick plug here. KubeCon London, Cloud Native Con is its alter ego name, is in London, April 1st to the 4th. We will be there live streaming from London and replaying here on Techstrong TV. Mitch, I think you'll be there. Mike, you'll be there. I'll be there. We'll be reporting from there. And also, I think it's in July, our own Techstrong virtual event that we do every year on the state of Cloud Native Now, which is also our website for Cloud Native, will be in July. This year's theme is One for the Road, right? Meaning we're taking Cloud Native on the road to the edge, the endpoint, and everything else. It's a bit of a Blues Brothers theme, and stay tuned for that. So, and that, of course, is virtual, so be able to watch that on demand or live. And that's in July. But for now, Mike, Mitch, Chris, and Jon, thanks for joining us today on Gang. Thank you out here for listening to our rants and therapy session on getting it off our chest of the world we live in. Who was it who said, what a revolting development this is? But anyway, stay tuned. We have all Techstrong TV following today's Gang. We'll see you tomorrow to end out the week here on this March week, first week of March. For now, though, that's it. It's Alan Schimmel. We're out of here.